They came with trucks, and 6 of them. Men in bright yellow vests jumped out holding clipboards and barking orders like they were law enforcement. One of them pointed at my front gate and shouted, "Cut it open!" before I could even open my mouth. A man with bolt cutters didn't hesitate. He snapped the lock on my private ranch gate like it was his job. I stood frozen on the porch of the old wooden house I had just restored with my own hands. My heart pounded in my chest as the bold red letters on the truck stared back at me. Cedar Grove HOA enforcement. What enforcement? I wasn't even part of the HOA. A short, angry woman with sunglasses and a walkie-talkie clipped to her belt marched up the gravel path toward me. "You're trespassing on HOA-governed land, sir. You need to cease all work immediately and report to the HOA office for registration. Effective immediately, you owe $3,500 in fines and $750 in monthly dues for non-compliance." I blinked. I bought this ranch, cash. It's abandoned land. I have the deed. This isn't even part of a neighborhood. The woman sneered. "Not anymore. The HOA board voted to expand. You fall under us now. You should have done your homework." My throat tightened. "Are you telling me I risked my entire life savings? $750,000 for a ranch I don't even control?" She smiled. "Oh, you'll still live here, just under our rules." Suddenly, the sound of a chainsaw ripped through the air. I turned in horror as 2 men began cutting down the wooden archway I had carved by hand over weeks, the one that read, "Green Valley Ranch." And right then, I realized, they were not leaving. They came to take over. But what they didn't know was I wasn't backing down. Let me tell you how all of this started. It was about 10 months ago when I first saw the ranch listing. I had spent 15 years working as a commercial electrician in San Diego, saving every penny I could. I wasn't born into wealth. My mom was a school janitor, and my dad worked the docks until he got sick. The ranch represented more than land to me. It was freedom. It was peace. It was a place where I could finally live without noise, neighbors, or nonsense. The ad said it had been abandoned for over 30 years. No neighbors for 5 miles, no city rules, no HOA. Just acres of dry grass, a collapsed barn, and an old ranch house that had seen better days. Most people would have laughed at the listing, but I saw a dream. I bought it outright for $420,000. I spent another $330,000 to restore it. New septic tank, solar panels, a greenhouse, a well, a rebuilt barn with actual livestock. The last time I was that proud of something was when I helped my mom buy her first car after years of catching the bus. But as I was working on the property, I noticed strange things. Flyers started showing up on my porch. Letters in official-looking envelopes with Cedar Grove HOA stamped on the front. At first, I thought it was junk mail. This place had no connection to Cedar Grove, a gated community about 4 miles down the road. Then came the visits. A guy named Dale in a sweater vest knocked one Saturday and said, "Hi, just checking to see if you've registered yet." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. I told him I wasn't part of any HOA. He didn't laugh. He pulled out a folded map and pointed to a highlighted area that now circled my ranch. "You're within the new expansion zone. Didn't you get the notice?" "No," I said plainly. "I'm not joining your HOA. I bought this land as is, and I checked the title. There's nothing tying me to Cedar Grove." Dale gave me a cold smile. That's what lawyers are for. I didn't hear from them for weeks after that, so I thought it was done. I was wrong. The truth is, most people don't think this can happen. But in my case, they were trying to make it happen, and I soon learned they had done it to others before. They counted on people being too scared, too tired, or too poor to fight them back. I wasn't any of those, but even I didn't expect them to raid my property. That morning, when they stormed in, I felt like I was in a bad dream. My fence was torn apart. My signs were removed. They slapped a notice on my front door that said, "Under HOA review." My dog Buck, my old black lab, was barking like mad, chained to the porch. One of the workers walked too close and Buck lunged. The guy jumped back and shouted, "That dog needs to be restrained under HOA pet policy. No aggressive breeds allowed." "Aggressive breeds?" I shouted, stepping off the porch. "That's a 12-year-old Labrador." "You'll have to appeal it," the woman with the walkie-talkie said flatly. I grabbed my phone and called the county recorder's office. I asked for a supervisor and demanded to know what was happening. The line crackled, and a man named Clark told me, "Sir, Cedar Grove recently filed a proposal to incorporate nearby lands into their jurisdiction. There's an active review. It hasn't been finalized yet, but they're here," I yelled. "They cut my gate, tore down my signs, and are telling me I owe money. How is this even legal?" "Sir," he said slowly, "technically it's not finalized. If they're taking action now, they're acting without authority." That was the first moment I felt a spark of hope. I rushed out to confront the crew, holding my phone out like a weapon. "The county says you have no authority here. Get off my land." The woman didn't blink. "We'll see about that. Expect a visit from our legal department." Then she whistled, and like trained dogs, her entire crew packed up and rolled out as quickly as they came. I stood there sweating, heart pounding, staring at the mess they left behind. My gate was destroyed, my archway was in pieces, and my pride was shattered. But not my fight. I called up a lawyer friend from San Diego, Maria, who specialized in property law. I told her everything. "They're trying to bully you," she said. "But if the property deed doesn't list an HOA covenant, and the expansion hasn't been approved, they're bluffing. They're trying to get you to comply before it becomes legal." "Can they really just expand and force me in?" "There's a process," she said, "but it takes time. And during that time, they can't do what they just did. That was illegal trespass." I looked around at my ruined gate and damaged porch. Maria said she'd look into filing an injunction to stop any more forced actions. "But it'll be a war," she warned. "HOAs have lawyers, boards, budgets. They're relentless." "I've already risked my life savings," I told her. "I'm not letting them steal my dream." And I meant it. The next day, I put up cameras. I built a temporary gate. I stayed up all night researching property codes, county zoning, and HOA expansion laws. I was determined to fight back. But I didn't realize that the next move they made would shake me worse than the raid. Because 2 nights later, someone came back. And they weren't wearing uniforms. They came quietly. And this time, they didn't knock. I was asleep when I heard the sound. It was faint at first, like boots crunching gravel. Buck growled low from under my bed. I sat up, heart thumping. The ranch was supposed to be peaceful, silent. No neighbors, no traffic, and certainly no footsteps after midnight. I slipped on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped onto the porch with a hammer tucked into my belt. My rifle was still locked inside the barn. I flicked the light toward the fence and froze. The temporary gate I'd built had been torn down. Again. Only this time, it wasn't a team in bright yellow vests. This time, it was quiet, calculated. I scanned the shadows and saw movement near the barn. 2 figures in dark clothing, flashlights off, creeping along the wall. They weren't HOA workers. They were trespassers. "Hey," I shouted. "You're on private property. I've called the sheriff." That was a lie. But they didn't know that. One of them bolted into the trees, but the other slipped around the corner of the barn, fast and silent. I chased after him, my flashlight bobbing through the dark. When I rounded the barn, he was gone, but the barn door was open. I stepped inside, hammer raised, but no one was there. Just my tools, my livestock feed, and the faint smell of motor oil. Then I saw it. A canister. Right there by the wall. It was leaking. I ran back outside and called 911. By the time the fire department arrived and checked it, they told me it was a type of industrial pesticide, highly flammable and banned in most states. "Someone planted this here," the fire chief said, frowning. "One spark, and this whole barn would have gone up." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I filed a police report for trespassing and attempted arson. The sheriff listened closely but sighed as he handed back my statement. Listen, these HOA types don't play fair. If they're trying to scare you off, it wouldn't be the first time I've seen it. You've seen this before? Cedar Grove's board has been aggressive lately, he said. They expanded twice already. Some folks sold and left. Others lawyered up. It's a fight they don't want publicized. I looked him straight in the eye. Well, they messed with the wrong guy. I drove straight to the county records office that morning and met Clark, the same man who told me about the review process. He showed me maps, filings, and the expansion zone proposal. It was true. Cedar Grove had filed paperwork to expand into neighboring areas, but it hadn't been finalized. The hearing was scheduled for 2 months from now. So legally, I said, I don't owe them anything. Correct, Clark nodded. Not until and unless the expansion is approved, and even then, you'll have a right to contest it. That's when the idea hit me. I would contest it. Not just through lawyers. I would expose them. I returned home and called Maria. We came up with a plan, one that involved legal paperwork, county oversight, and most importantly, publicity. If Cedar Grove wanted to play dirty, we were going to shine a light on it. But the HOA wasn't slowing down. That weekend, I received a certified letter claiming I owed $7,800 in fines for unauthorized structures, excessive noise from livestock, refusal to comply with HOA landscaping guidelines, and my favorite, disruptive signage. Disruptive signage? They meant the wooden board I carved myself that said private ranch, no HOA. Maria helped me draft a cease and desist notice in return, warning them that further contact or intrusion would result in legal action. But the HOA didn't back off. Instead, they made a move that cut me deep. On Monday morning, I got a call from a local supply company. They said a representative from Cedar Grove had canceled my next delivery of animal feed and solar parts, claiming I was vacating the property. They even told the truck drivers that the ranch was under forced review. My animals went hungry for a full day. I had to drive 2 hours to restock everything myself. And I'll be honest, for the first time, I started to doubt myself. Was this worth it? Was holding on to this land really more important than my peace? But then I remembered where I came from. 15 years of saving every penny. No vacations, no brand new trucks, no eating out. I'd slept in my van during training jobs just to save hotel fees. I'd sacrificed everything for this land, and I wasn't going to let a bunch of clipboard cowboys take it from me. I knew I needed backup, so I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my cousin Eric. He was a contractor and former Army Ranger who now worked in rural property security. He arrived the next day with a 4-wheel drive, a duffel bag of cameras and surveillance gear, and a look that said he was ready to start something. "Tell me where you want eyes," he said. We set up hidden trail cams, door sensors, motion lights, everything. I didn't want just to protect the ranch. I wanted proof. Proof of what the HOA was really doing. But that night, as Eric and I sat by the fire outside, sipping coffee and staring out at the dark hills, I had no idea that the HOA was planning something bigger, much bigger. Because the next morning I was woken by the rumble of tires, again. Only this time, it wasn't 6 trucks. It was a convoy, 12 vehicles, a trailer, a bulldozer, and a man in a suit stepped out. He raised a megaphone. "Per order of the Cedar Grove HOA board," he shouted, "we are exercising emergency compliance measures. You are hereby given notice. This property is under full jurisdiction." Then the bulldozer roared to life and headed straight for my greenhouse. "Hey, get that thing off my land!" I sprinted barefoot across the yard, gravel biting into my heels as the bulldozer crept toward my greenhouse, the one I built with my own hands from salvaged windows and rebar, where I'd planted tomatoes, peppers, and herbs to make my new life self-sufficient. Eric was already ahead of me, yelling at the top of his lungs. He grabbed a shovel and banged it against the bulldozer's blade. The operator hesitated, engine rumbling like a sleeping beast, but didn't stop. I stood in front of the machine, arms stretched wide. "If you touch my greenhouse, I swear I'll file criminal charges. You don't have the right." The man with the megaphone strolled forward with the calm of a man who thought he owned the earth. His name tag read, Gregory Holt, HOA Legal. "Sir," he said, voice full of fake concern, "you are in violation of Cedar Grove HOA's emergency land use codes. This structure was not approved. We're within our rights to remove it." I laughed, loud, bitter, almost crazed. "Are you joking? I'm not part of your HOA. You know it. This land isn't even within your borders yet." He pulled out a folder. "As of this morning, the board has submitted an urgent appeal to expedite the expansion. The county zoning committee has been informed." "You mean they've been bullied?" I snapped. Gregory smiled like a snake stretching its jaws. "That's a strong word, Mr. Jenkins, but we'll let the courts decide." Behind us, the bulldozer's engine screamed to life again. That's when Eric stepped up and did something I didn't expect. He climbed on top of the bulldozer. He climbed up the side like it was a jungle gym, slammed the emergency kill switch, and shouted, "If anyone here takes one more step toward this structure, I will consider it criminal destruction of property and I will act accordingly." Gregory's face turned red. "That's trespassing. That's private land," Eric said calmly, hopping down. "And I've got everything recorded." Gregory backed away slowly, pulling out a phone. "You'll regret this." I stared at him as they turned around one by one and left again, this time not so confident. But I knew this wasn't over. After they left, Eric and I sat at the porch, watching the sun stretch over the hills. My greenhouse stood tall for now, but my hands were shaking. "They're escalating," Eric muttered. "They want to scare me into quitting," I said. "And it might work," Eric replied quietly, "if you don't hit back harder." That night we got to work. Maria had already helped draft an official restraining order request, but we needed more than legal paperwork. We needed noise, attention, public eyes on what was happening. So I called in a favor from an old friend named Ashley who worked for a local news channel. She agreed to come out the next morning with a camera crew. We gave her everything: the footage from the raid, the pesticide canister, the bulldozer, the cancellation of my deliveries, and now, the emergency HOA stunt. "This is insane," she whispered as she reviewed the files. "They're trying to annex your ranch by force." "I need people to know this could happen to them too," I told her, and she promised she'd tell the story. But just when I thought we might be getting ahead, another hit came. That evening I heard Buck barking frantically. I ran out and found him foaming slightly at the mouth, pawing at the dirt. I rushed him to the vet, terrified. Turns out someone had thrown meat over the fence laced with something, not enough to kill, but enough to sicken. The vet confirmed it, and my stomach dropped. They tried to poison my dog. I filed another police report. This time I demanded that the sheriff look into HOA involvement. But without video evidence of the meat being thrown, they said it was suspicious but inconclusive. Eric was fuming. "We need to put out more cameras," he said. We spent the whole night installing 6 new cameras, infrared, wide angle, and motion triggered. Every corner of the ranch was under surveillance now, but still, I couldn't sleep. How far were they willing to go? The news segment aired the next morning. Ashley's voice echoed from the porch TV. "A local man is fighting back against a powerful HOA that's attempting to take control of his privately owned ranch through questionable tactics, including forced entry, threats, and even destruction of property." They aired footage of the raid, the bulldozer, and even Buck recovering at the vet. People started reaching out. Comments poured in. "This is crazy. How is this legal? HOAs are the worst." For the first time, I didn't feel alone. Then, something surprising happened. A woman knocked on my door that afternoon. She looked about 60, kind eyes, and wore a faded denim jacket. "Name's Linda," she said. "I live 2 miles north of here. Used to be outside Cedar Grove's reach until they swallowed us up last year." I invited her in, and we sat on the porch. "They tried everything on me," she said. Fines, threats, shut down my chicken coop, even tried to seize my water tank. What did you do? I sold, she said quietly. Couldn't take it. Moved into town. But I saw your story and I wanted you to know. You're not the first. But maybe you can be the last. Linda gave me a box. Inside were letters, photos, documents from her battle with the HOA. Proof. My fight wasn't just mine anymore. But as she left, her last words stuck with me. Watch your back. They don't like losing. That night, just past midnight, one of the new cameras sent an alert. Eric and I rushed to the screen. There they were, 3 men in dark hoodies and gloves crouching near the barn again. One of them held a gas can. The other had a flare. I froze. Eric grabbed the shotgun, and we sprinted into the darkness, toward them. Drop it. Right now. Eric's voice bellowed into the night like thunder. He cocked the shotgun, and the sound echoed across the hills like a warning from the earth itself. The 3 figures jerked upright, startled. One bolted instantly, dropping the flare. The second hesitated, then took off running. But the third, he tripped on a coil of wire near the barn and slammed into the ground hard. Eric rushed in, weapon lowered but ready. "Don't move!" he yelled. I followed close behind, phone already dialing the sheriff's department, as I caught a better look at the man on the ground. He was about 30, wiry and wearing gloves. His hoodie bore the faint logo of Cedar Grove Maintenance, caught red-handed. I handed the phone to Eric and grabbed one of the portable work lights from the barn, shining it directly onto the man's face. He winced. "You were going to burn my barn down," I said coldly. "You brought gasoline and a flare." "I was just following orders," he stammered. "It wasn't my idea." My stomach turned. Whose idea was it? But he clamped his lips shut. 15 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived. We showed them the surveillance footage, the gas can, the flare, and the confession. They arrested the man on the spot. As they led him away, I asked one of the deputies, "Will this tie back to the HOA?" The deputy shrugged. "Depends what he says in custody. But if this is retaliation for the story, someone's going to have a lot of explaining to do." Eric watched the patrol car disappear into the trees. "We're not dealing with just paperwork and clipboards anymore," he said grimly. "They're getting desperate." I nodded. Desperate people make mistakes, and we're finally catching them in the act. We stayed up all night going through Linda's documents, HOA letters, fine notices, pictures of her chicken coop being bulldozed, her garden ripped out, her rain barrel smashed. It was a pattern, and it matched my story perfectly. The next morning, Ashley called me. "I saw the footage. The guy you caught, he's not just some maintenance worker. I did some digging. His name's Mason Rudd. He's the nephew of one of the Cedar Grove board members." My jaw clenched. So they are using family to do their dirty work. Ashley was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "This just turned into something bigger than a local land dispute. I'm pitching it to regional news now, maybe national." I hung up and looked out over the hills of my ranch. It should have been peaceful. It should have been mine. But instead, it felt like I was standing in the middle of a battlefield. Still, the messages from people across the country poured in. Veterans, retirees, first-time buyers, people who had lost their land to HOAs or were fighting them right now. "Thank you for speaking out. You're inspiring so many of us. Keep going. Don't stop." It gave me fuel. Because just when I thought we might finally be catching a break, a new storm rolled in. Literally. 3 days later, a thunderstorm hit the region. Winds howled, trees snapped, and lightning struck one of the tall oaks at the edge of my ranch, setting it ablaze. We managed to contain the fire, but not before it scorched half an acre of fencing and damaged the eastern paddock. The next morning, I found a notice nailed to what was left of the gate. Failure to maintain fire prevention landscaping. HOA fine, $12,000. They didn't waste a second. The storm was an act of nature, but they used it as an excuse to fine me, Again. They even marked the area as neglected property in a new map that somehow made its way into the hands of a local real estate developer. That's when Maria called. "I just got a copy of Cedar Grove's expedited filing," she said. "They're trying to push an emergency vote through the zoning board, saying your property is a safety hazard, a blight on the community, and needs to be annexed immediately for proper management." "They're trying to take it," I said. "For real this time?" "Yes," Maria said quietly. "And if they succeed, you lose everything." Eric slammed his fist on the table. "Then it's time we go public, I mean full-blown rally mode. We put out a call to action online, social media, forums, YouTube. I even posted a live video walking through the burned paddock, the ruined fence, and the notice. I showed the cameras, the sabotage, the arrests, and the patterns. I told my full story, and people responded. They showed up. Dozens of folks from nearby counties drove in and held signs on the road. "Stop HOA abuse, hands off private land, and ranches aren't subdivisions." Ashley returned with her full crew and aired a live report from the field. We even invited local officials to witness the damage for themselves. And that's when the real bombshell dropped. One of the zoning board members who came out to tour the ranch pulled me aside afterward. "I'm not supposed to say this," she whispered, "but Cedar Grove has been pressuring us for months. Threats, bribes, promises of donations if we push their expansions through quickly." "You're saying they're corrupt?" "I'm saying," she looked me straight in the eye, "you should come to the hearing in person. Bring everything. Because if you do, you might just stop this." And I plan to. But right before the hearing, as Eric and I prepared our documents and evidence, one of the cameras pinged again. This time it was someone in a suit, walking alone, holding a folder. It was Gregory Holt, the HOA lawyer himself. He walked straight up to the porch and knocked. Eric reached for the shotgun, but I raised a hand. "Let's hear what he has to say." Gregory looked tired, sweat on his collar. He didn't smile this time. "I'm here to make you an offer," he said. I narrowed my eyes. "You've got 5 seconds." He held up the folder. "The board wants to settle. No annexation, no expansion. In exchange, you sign a confidentiality agreement and stop talking to the media." I stared at him. They were finally scared. But what he didn't know was I wasn't interested in settling. Not anymore. Because now, I was going to destroy them. I didn't take the folder. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I stepped forward, met Gregory Holt's eyes, and said, "You're a little late. I'm not interested in hush money." He blinked, then adjusted his tie. "It's not hush money, Mr. Jenkins. It's a reasonable agreement. This has gotten out of hand. You've made your point." "No," I said firmly. "You crossed the line. You raided my land. You tried to poison my dog. You sent a bulldozer after my greenhouse and a man with a gas can after my barn. And now that I have the evidence and people are watching, you want to sweep it under the rug?" Gregory looked away. He didn't deny a word. I continued. "You tell your board this ranch isn't just land. It's my life. And I'm not selling it. I'm not joining your HOA, and I'm not backing down." He gave a dry, forced smile. "Then I guess I'll see you at the hearing." "You will, and I won't be alone." He turned and walked off, slower this time, not with the same smug strut he arrived with. He knew he was beat. The cracks in Cedar Grove's wall were showing. 2 days later, I arrived at the zoning board hearing. The courtroom was packed. Local officials, Cedar Grove reps, press, citizens, and dozens of supporters holding up signs that read things like, "Protect private ranches," and "Say no to forced HOA expansion." Maria stood beside me with a full binder of legal documents. Eric, arms crossed, sat behind me like a bodyguard. Ashley from the news station had her cameraman rolling from the far corner of the room. When the meeting began, the Cedar Grove president, a slick guy named Douglas Kane, stood up in a tailored suit and started his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, We are simply trying to bring unity and consistency to our growing community. Our expansion plan includes incorporating nearby lands, including a parcel currently occupied by Mr. Jenkins, who we believe could benefit greatly from our support and oversight." "Support?" I said under my breath. "You mean harassment?" Then it was my turn. Maria handed me our evidence binder, and I walked to the podium. My heart was pounding, but I remembered everything I'd been through, every nail I'd driven into the walls of my barn, every night I slept with one eye open, every cruel trick they played. I began, "I'm not a politician, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a man who saved for 15 years to build a dream. And that dream was nearly destroyed by an HOA that believes land ownership means nothing if it isn't under their thumb." I showed photos, before and after the raid. I played the video of the bulldozer, the flare, the man we caught trying to burn my barn, the arrest. I read Linda's story aloud too, about her coop and garden, and how she was forced to sell because she had no fight left in her. The room fell silent. Then I said something that made even the board members stop writing. "You are not voting on paperwork today. You are voting on whether or not people like me, people who want to live free and work their land, deserve protection from power-hungry neighbors hiding behind rules they made up themselves." The chairman of the board leaned forward. "Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Jenkins?" I nodded. "Yes. I have over 3,000 signatures from residents and landowners in this county who oppose forced HOA expansions, and more coming in every day." I handed over the petition. Then I walked back to my seat. For the next 2 hours there was debate. Cedar Grove lawyers squirmed. The board asked questions. They asked about legality, history, and ethics. And they kept circling back to one thing. Why did this HOA act as if the land was already theirs, when it wasn't? Then something remarkable happened. One of the board members, the same woman who warned me earlier, stood up. "I move that we deny the emergency expansion request from Cedar Grove HOA and refer their conduct for independent investigation." The vote was taken. 4-1. Motion passed. I had won. Cedar Grove was stopped. But it didn't end there. 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the county prosecutor. They had opened a case against Cedar Grove HOA for multiple counts: illegal trespassing, attempted property damage, harassment, and potential bribery of zoning officials. Gregory Holt, disbarred pending investigation. Douglas Kane, stepped down. And the Cedar Grove board, replaced. I became a sort of local hero overnight. I didn't want the fame, but I accepted the responsibility. I gave talks at landowner meetings. I worked with Maria to help others resist forced HOA abuse. Even Eric started his own business helping ranchers secure their property rights. But the real victory? Peace. My ranch is quiet again. The wind moves through the trees like it used to. Buck chases squirrels without fear. My greenhouse stands tall. The tomatoes are finally ripe. And on the same old archway I rebuilt over the gate, I carved new words. Not for sale, not for lease, not for HOA. But just when I thought everything was settling, I got a new envelope in the mail. No logo this time, no return address. Inside was a single note. You may have won the battle, but the land war has only begun. I stared at the paper, feeling the familiar burn in my chest. I folded the note carefully, because if Cedar Grove, or any other HOA, thought I was scared, they clearly hadn't learned their lesson. Not yet. I placed the anonymous note down on the kitchen counter, right beside my morning cup of coffee. Buck rested at my feet, still limping slightly from the poison incident, but alive. Thank God. Outside, the wind swayed the tall grass as if the land itself was breathing again. But the message was clear. They weren't done. I called Maria first. She was already deep into the legal backlash from Cedar Grove's collapse. Could be a scare tactic, she said, voice calm. Or it could be someone new. There are a dozen HOA boards in this county. Some are quiet, some not. Eric wasn't so casual. We double down, he said. More cameras, more fences. I've got buddies who will run perimeter sweeps twice a week. If they want a land war, they picked the wrong ranch. But I was tired. Not weak, just weary. I'd fought the biggest battle of my life, and now they wanted more? Still, I knew one thing. If I walked away now, they'd win eventually. Not just on paper, but in the minds of others. Fear spreads faster than fire. So I took action. I organized a community town hall, rented out a local hall and invited ranchers, homeowners, veterans, retirees, anyone who had been bullied by an HOA or felt unsure about their property rights. Over 200 people showed up. Some brought documents, some brought tears. One elderly couple brought cookies and a manila folder thicker than my palm. Records from their 10-year fight with an HOA that tried to fine them for having too many sunflowers in their front yard. I spoke from the heart. I'm not here to sell you anything, I said into the mic. I'm just here to remind you that you own your land, not your neighbor, not a clipboard, not a board of strangers who never picked up a shovel. You. The crowd applauded. It was powerful and humbling. I spent the following weeks helping people contest unfair fines, rebuild fences, and understand their rights. But I hadn't forgotten the note, and neither had the sender. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the ridge, I found a drone hovering above my barn. Not just passing by, hovering. Eric and I watched it from the porch, silent, unmoving. Want me to shoot it down? He asked. Not yet, I said. Let's watch. The drone turned, zipped up high, then shot away toward the hills near the far end of my property. I drove out there the next day, past the windmill, down the trail that led to the old irrigation ditch. And that's when I saw it. Survey flags, red and white markers poked from the ground in a straight line, dozens of them, running parallel to my fence line. A fresh land survey. I followed the flags back to a parked truck half hidden behind trees. The side bore the name, Oak Ridge Development Co. A man stood beside it, clipboard in hand. When he saw me, he smiled, way too friendly. Hey there, neighbor. Just doing some early prep. We're looking at a new luxury community up this way. Maybe a golf course, a spa, you know, modern living. I stepped closer. This is private land. He pointed to his map. Everything beyond that ridge just got bought up. Our client is filing for annexation. You're sitting right near the new planned entrance. My jaw tightened. Who's the client? He smiled again. Can't say, confidential. But I didn't need to ask twice. I knew. HOA wasn't just a board, it was a network. Cedar Grove may have fallen, but others were ready to take its place. Maybe with a new name, a new face, but the same old hunger. They weren't coming to join me. They were coming to surround me. I left that site fuming but focused. I knew this was only the beginning of round 2, so I met with Maria and Eric again. This time, I told them, we go federal. Maria agreed. With the news coverage and community backing, we might have grounds to push a state-level ordinance, something to limit forced annexation and HOA overreach. Eric added, let's bring in other victims too, bigger stories, class action lawsuits. Let's start a real movement. So that's what we did. We started a nonprofit, Land First. Its mission, protect private landowners from unauthorized HOA expansions and abuse. We built a website, created legal templates, published how-to guides, and shared stories, mine included. Donations began trickling in, not millions, but enough to cover printing costs and legal filings for people who couldn't afford them. Retired farmers, widows, first-time landowners, people like me. We didn't just fight back. We taught others how to win. The drone stopped showing up. No more survey flags. And eventually, the quiet returned. One morning, about 4 months after that strange man and his drone, I sat on my porch with Buck. The sky was wide and blue, chickens clucked softly in the yard, and a delivery truck rolled up, bringing fresh timber for a new guest cabin I was building near the stream. The driver, a guy named Roy, handed me the clipboard to sign. As he turned to leave, he paused. "Hey," he said, "you the guy from the HOA fight? That video went viral." I nodded, chuckling softly. "Yeah, that's me." He grinned. "You gave us all hope, man. HOA tried to pull some stuff in my mom's neighborhood. She printed your story and handed it out at a board meeting. They backed off." I smiled. "Tell her to call if they ever come back." As he drove off, I looked out at the ranch again. It was still mine. Every fence post, every stubborn weed, every storm-scarred tree. And I knew I'd never stop protecting it. Because this ranch wasn't just dirt and grass, it was a message. To anyone who thought they could take what didn't belong to them. You can't bully the wrong guy and expect to walk away untouched. So if you're out there, on your land, in your home, fighting a battle that feels too big, remember this: you're not alone. And if an HOA ever shows up with fines, threats, or fake rules, you tell them about Green Valley Ranch. And you tell them, we don't scare easy. If you enjoyed this story and want more jaw-dropping, true-inspired tales about land, HOAs, or justice served, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for the next unbelievable story.